Hey man, can you hear me?
I can hear you really well, actually. Yeah.
Cool. Well, I'll just start rolling and we'll see what happens.
Okay.
Welcome to a special audio edition of Chasing Billy. We've got the notorious Doss Boot with us. He hasn't joined us. It's been some time since we've had him on as a guest. He's a fan favorite and a personal favorite of mine as well, so we need to have him on more and get him back in the public view. But he's always more than willing to share his encyclopedic knowledge and expertise with us. And today we're going to discuss something that's a little, uh, well, not a little, very in tune with what brought me to Billy originally, and that's questions about Billy the Kid's origins and his parentage and where he comes from. And while we do not know for sure where he comes from, we do stumble across information at times that allows us to rule out certain hypotheses and possibilities. And this is going to be one of those episodes where we focus on one of those previous hypotheses that we can now, at least within a very close range of near certainty, rule out. Without further ado, Doss, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, brother. It's been a long time. It's good to talk to you.
It's kind of cool doing an audio show. I feel like I'm on the radio. I like that a lot more, actually.
Yeah, I've got a little bit more focus. You know what I mean? I don't got to worry about too much going on with, well, who can see me, who can't. Oh, can I see the chat? I can't see the chat. You know. So yeah, let's try this and see how it goes, and hopefully there's no lag issues like we've suffered from in the past.
Yeah. So when you go to Billy the Kid's Wikipedia page, it'll tell
Yes.
you with authority that Billy the Kid was born to
Right.
Patrick McCarthy and Catherine Devine. So this is
Yes.
probably one of the most prominent theories about Billy the Kid's origins, and we're going to talk about that tonight. What can you tell us about Patrick McCarty and Catherine Devine?
Okay. Well, and as you started by saying, you have Wikipedia, there is WikiTree, several genealogy sites that you can kind of dive into. Not all of them, of course, are the most authentic, or with legitimacy as far as the research is concerned. But, this one has really stood the test of time. And I felt like it was just time to just look at the dates, look what we have at documentation, and try to um, piece together an accurate timeline as to why this theory, to me, doesn't make sense, doesn't hold water. The discrepancies that we did find along the way, which we will talk about some serious date discrepancies. It's going to be a very fact based episode about here's what the documentation says here, here's what it says here, right? And here's our discrepancies, and we're going to try to figure that out. And then, of course, we've got one big, you know, ultimate piece of documentation that kind of puts the nail in the hole, in the coffin of the whole theory, I would say, and we'll get to that at the end. So here's what we know. Okay. A historian by the name of Jack Damatos in 1978, he published an article in Real West number 21, and it is titled The Search for Billy the Kid's Roots, November 1978. He followed that up with The Search for Billy the Kid's Roots is Over, Real West 23, January 1980. Now, he also, as a source, has an unpublished manuscript that was titled Billy the Kid's Real Mother. Okay. That is where this theory came to play. As far as I know, there is nothing about it pre 1978, 1980, his articles, his research. Okay.
Right.
Now we're going to go over what Jack Damatos, I believe that's how you say it, is Damatos. Here is his research. Okay. It has been repeated in a few books, books that were written post his articles, and and those authors who had access to his research and his articles, they did include it. So we've got Nolan, there's Utley, Mills, James Blake Mills. There's a few other authors that did get a chance to include this. Anything, before that, obviously they weren't aware of that, of that knowledge that Damatos had uncovered. So
Right.
here is his research. Okay, everything following that comes out of my mouth comes from Jack Damatos in those two articles and his unpublished manuscript. And we will talk about who used that as a source and where that came from and how he got it, if we can. Okay, so here we go. Catherine Devine, born around 1829 or 1830 in Ireland. She had a twin sister, apparently, named Bridget. Okay. Now, Bridget and Catherine set sail on the ship called the Mary Hale. It departed Liverpool and arrived in New York City May 24th, 1850. She married Patrick M. McCarthy on June 19th, 1851, in the Church of St. Peter in Lower Manhattan. Okay. First daughter, born 1853, question mark. About 1853, we have no date. First daughter, but there's no date. It just says 1853. Okay. Now they've got daughter number 2, which I must have missed this first time around. So this is interesting. Daughter number 2, Marianne McCarthy, died August 13th, 1856, born August 15th, 1855. So barely a year old, right? And according to Damatos, she was buried in the Calvary Cemetery, Woodside, Queens County, New York. Before I continue, I want everyone who's listening, who gets a chance to, you hear this, see this, whatever, that their name is McCarthy, not McCarty. Now that is a big, to me, that's a huge discrepancy. Every time I've seen this in print, their names are printed as McCarty. But as we're going to find out, that the documentation from the start has always said McCarthy. There's always been an H.
So
these are two different Irish surnames, right? They're not we dropped the H as as a way to Americanize the name. I've heard different excuses and different reasons. Oh, they dropped the H. Common misspelling, that is more likely if that was the case, but there's too much of it to show that their last name was McCarthy with an H, not McCarty.
So
while that may not seem like a big difference, it is.
When you say that every time you see it in print, it's McCarty, you mean every time you see it in a Billy the Kid book or a research article?
Correct.
Okay. And
yes,
then
correct.
When you
correct.
go to the source documentations, it's always McCarthy with a TH.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Census information, everything is McCarthy with a THY.
Gotcha.
Correct. Okay. So everything we're doing right now is straight from Damatos's research. Okay. All right. Then we have one more child, of course, Joseph. I'm going to put supposedly born October 14th, 1863. We will discuss why. According to the research, he was born at 210 Green Street, which was their address in Lower Manhattan. Okay. So October 14th, 1863. Okay. Now, we know where that information came from. Now, here's our kid. All right. Here's our supposed boy. Patrick Henry McCarthy, born September 17th, 1859, where? 210 Green Street, Lower Manhattan. So coincidentally, no information on the birth date, the actual date, or where she was born, a hospital, or nothing for Bridget.
Mm-hmm.
But we have exact birth dates for Joseph and this Patrick Henry. Okay. Exact birth dates. They're both born in the house in Manhattan. Okay. Patrick Henry McCarthy is baptized by a Reverend J. Conran, Church of St. Peter, on September 28th, 1859. Okay. 1 year later, the 1860 census, First Ward District of Manhattan. It reads Patrick M. McCarthy.
Mm-hmm.
The H is very clear. Age 30. Age 30. Birthplace, Ireland. Occupation, day laborer. Catherine McCarthy, age 29. Birthplace, Ireland. Her name is actually abbreviated. Catherine is down to CTHN. So it's not her full name. It's the only name that's abbreviated.
Right.
So CTHN. Okay. Age 29, birthplace, Ireland. Bridget McCarthy, age 7, birthplace, United States. And then Henry McCarthy, age 1, birthplace, United States. But there's no Patrick. The best I could find as far as book source, something that really narrowed it down, and I think that's very common, is that Mills, James Blake Mills, in his book El Bendito Simpatico, suggested that, hey, it's one of these census things. The Patrick was left off. Maybe they referred to him as Henry within the home, but he's 1 year old. So obviously we know that they didn't get their last name incorrect, right? So their last name is McCarthy, Thy. Okay. So that is what we have now, that census. Now, what I find interesting, that you and I had discussed this a while ago, Frederick Nolan's still fantastic book. I love the book. It might be coming a little outdated, maybe, but West of Billy the Kid, same thing. You go to the index and you go to the last name McCarty, and you will find in the index Patrick, Bridget, and they're both on the same page. And he discusses it very, very briefly, like 3 sentences,
Right.
like the possibility, right? But he still doesn't correct it. In the index, it's McCarty, not McCarthy. I don't know what happened there. I can only have my suggestion, and without trying to make any kind of like derogatory comment about someone's research, or they did something purposely. We know mistakes happen, or, oh man, I got it mixed up. I was off by a decade in my year because I wrote it wrong. I understand that. The thing is what I noticed is that if all the historians who had access to Damatos's research, they all used him as the source.
Right.
So all that information that I read about Patrick Henry McCarthy, birthplace, at the address at home, birth date September 17th, 1859. When you look in the back of historian books for those sources and you find these things, it just refers to Jack Damatos's 2 articles.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody who did have access to it, anybody preemptively, they didn't know. After that, it's just Jack Damatos as their source. And I understand that. That'd be the first step. But I would expect that record information. He's got exact dates. Okay. He's got a baptism date and location, right? Why aren't these historians, just as a question, why did they not check? Because if they would have checked, if they would have double checked that census, especially the 1861, I mean, you could have kind of eliminated a little bit right there, just with the McCarthy, right? And okay, that's not correct. So it just tells me that it was just they read his articles and they referred to him as the source, and that his research is legit. And of course, we do see some things like Bridget shows up age 7, which would put her birth date around 1853, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So I get it. Irish, New York, mother named Catherine. I see it. I understand. He gets a tunnel vision. He gets a confirmation bias, maybe timeline going, and now he's going to put it together.
Right.
But as we have discovered, you yourself, Mills, myself, Josh, anyone that has tackled this comes up extremely short. And there's got to be a reason why. Right? I don't understand what that is. I'm not sure. But we have more. Okay. But as up to this point right now, the information that we have, there's just the discrepancies are obviously there. There's a few that don't quite click. Like, I don't understand how the first daughter has zero information about the birth date.
Right.
I think that's odd. Okay. Now, and of course, Joseph is born 1863, apparently, October 14th, 1863. So his name is not on that 1860 census.
Right.
Now, what happens after this? The whereabouts of Catherine, Patrick, the father, and Bridget, and Joseph become just a lost oblivion. You don't know what's going on. There's nothing to follow them. Now, Damatos did speculate, and I understand that in this he made clear that it's possible he had dead. There's no definitive link whatsoever. That it's possible that the father, Patrick McCarthy, may have died during the draft riots that took place between July 13th and the 16th, 1863.
Right.
The New York City Directory 1863 was Father Patrick McCarthy's final listing.
Wow. Okay.
He does not appear. He does not appear after that. Now, this is just the straight New York City Directory. So we do have some documentation for things. So 1863 is the last one. Same thing. He is a day laborer. That's it. 1863, he doesn't appear again. However, New York City Directory 1864 lists Catherine McCarthy, widow of Patrick, 210 Green Street. So there we go.
In the 1863 directory, is this Patrick at 210 Green?
Yes.
Wow.
Okay. So 2 of their children are born in this address. And there's Catherine, widow of Patrick, 210 Green Street.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. After this, 1870, as far as the decade U.S. federal census, I couldn't find them. I didn't go super deep because we do know what we're going to know here about Patrick Henry. So I didn't go crazy. But when I asked you, when you have researched this and discovered what you had discovered, which we'll discuss, did you ever find anything about Catherine Devine McCarthy, the legit one? Not, the one that's blended Catherine Antrim, McCarty, and this Catherine together as one. Because that's what's happened, right? Because, this clearly is the right kid. This is the right. I get it. Everything lines up. But then after those 1863, 1864 directories, nothing. Nothing.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Until 1880. Federal Census, New York, First District, Patrick H. McCarthy, age 21. So let's remember that. 1880, okay, says birth about 1859.
Mm-hmm.
Damato said he was born September 17th, 1859. Okay, so that would make sense. Okay, so we got that. Age 21, birth about 1859. He resided in house number 127 Madison Street. Occupation, cab driver. Father and mother's birthplace, Ireland. Okay?
Yep.
He is married to a Mary McCarthy. She is 18 years old. He's 21, she's 18. Okay? The best I could find out is they were actually married in 1880, but I could not find a date. I couldn't find a marriage document. I did a couple different word, switcheroos and filters, didn't get it. so I
Right.
didn't go any further. But you know how that goes. If I had a lot more time to really dig, I would have. But I wanted to focus mainly on Patrick Henry because then he starts coming up. Okay, so then the 1900 U.S. federal census. So we had 1880. Didn't see nothing for 1890. 1900 U.S. federal census. He shows back up again. Patrick H. McCarthy. Now get this. His birth now says October 1862.
Yep.
Birthplace, New York. Fifth Ward. He lives on Beach Street. Still married to Mary M. McCarthy. Marriage year 1880. 20 years married. Occupation, now truck driver. So cab driver at the age of 21. Almost 20 years later, he's now a truck driver. Okay. Father and mother, birthplace, Ireland. Okay. Now, I found something else after you and I talked. So just a few hours back, I found something else. Okay. So the one I just read was the 1900 U.S. federal census. This is all chronological. Here is the 1905 New York state census. The information is not as abundant. We have no birth date, like an actual date. But check this out. So 5 years after that federal census in 1900, birth year, about 1859. Occupation, truck driver. Age, 47. Residence, Manhattan, New York. Wife, Mary McCarthy, age 43. They also, in their residence, had a woman named Elizabeth Anthony, and she is listed as Aunt, age
Hmm.
56. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Now, see that discrepancy? I don't know what happened here, but we've got a continuous born around 1858, 1859, right? We have the exact date that Damato provided, September 17th, 1859.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, that 1860 census is a very good one because it's got him listed as 1 year old. He might only say Henry McCarthy with no Patrick, but he's 1 year old in 1860. So, how does his birth date become October 1862
Right.
and then 1905? Like, you know what I mean? There's a lot of discrepancies in these dates. That's why I wanted it to go right in order so everyone could try to, follow along. And now they've got their ages all okay. So, which is accurate? I don't know what happened here, why the October 1862 came into play. But notice something. October 1862, listed as his, birth date on that 1900 federal census. Randomly, it says October. Okay. The other brother, Joseph, this Joseph McCarthy, born October 14th, 1863, supposedly. Those dates are a little closer together, right? So what happened to Patrick Henry McCarthy being born in September of 1859, or at least an approximate 1859? I don't know how that happened for the census.
Well, it's
Not
almost like
sure why
he wanted to be younger, so he just took his brother's birth date.
right. And we've come to find out that this was kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of men drifting, even in the frontier time, but as the old west was dying as we knew it, closer to 1900, that century got cars.
Yeah.
Trains are now all over the country. As that starts to die down, I started hearing about this. There was a lot of people that were moving to bigger cities, and then when the census takers came around, they were given phony birth dates because they wanted to sound younger. They
Yeah.
wanted to seem younger. So I understand. Again, we have these things we could speculate and
Yes.
go, well, that's interesting. But I don't know where that came from. So we got to keep that in mind. But then 5 years later, at 1905, in the New York State Census, again, birth date about 1859. So, but there's no way that the Patrick H. McCarthy in the 1900 census is not him. It's definitely him.
Yeah.
It's the same wife, same everything, same occupation. Everything follows him. So now we've got that. So we've got some discrepancies. Now we should mention along this way that we are obviously not the only ones. Numerous people, numerous, have tried to find information on Bridget, Joseph, this Patrick McCarthy, the father, nothing.
Right.
And the best I can remember, it was James Blake Mills in El Bandito Simpatico. And he simply states that after that last appearance in the directory, there's no definitive documentation of Catherine Devine McCarthy, her daughter Bridget, and sons Henry and Joseph. They seem to just disappear from New York records.
Yeah.
And then Patrick Henry, of course, shows up in everything that we just read. Now, here's the big one. Here's the solidifier that you yourself, good sir, discovered, I believe, summer of last year. I think it was 2024, but I think it was summer around there, maybe August, July. And you had told me that you believe that I don't have his book, that Roy Young had this in his book as well. But, you posted this and always intrigued by finding things that are just, man, it just puts the stamp on everything. To me, this is as solidified as it gets, and you can't get around it.
Right.
Okay. Death certificate. Patrick McCarthy died September 30th, 1914, Bronx, New York, St. Joseph's Hospital. Date of birth, October 17th, 1862. Age, 51. Occupation, truck driver. Married. Yes, it just says married or single. It says married, yes. Name of father, Patrick M. McCarthy. Birthplace, Ireland. Maiden name of mother, Catherine Devine. Birthplace, Ireland.
Yeah.
He is buried at the Cavalry Cemetery on October 1st, 1914. He is in plot 3rd Cavalry, Section 19, Range 2, Plot E, grave number 8, unmarked, in between two gigantic headstones. He is in an unmarked plot, and I have a photo of it. Okay. So there we have it. As far as that right there, he lives till 1914, dies in the Bronx. It doesn't seem like he ever left New York. And if he did, it doesn't really particularly matter. But there's the information as factual as it can be, other than without speculating. Is it possible? Is it, we know from that, anyone who might have done this research, on their own, knew this, had read any other book, know that, okay, this is great research. I applaud Damatos for trying to get to the truth.
Yeah.
But I do kind of wonder why at the very beginning did the name get put forth as McCarthy when it's definitely McCarthy. I've been kind of a little tripped up on that. It kind of makes me, wonder. But I understand when you put all that together, you're seeing a 1-year-old Henry McCarthy, New York, a mother named Catherine, right? Like, I'd be like, oh my goodness, is that him?
Yeah.
Like, I would, man, that light bulb would go off for me for sure.
Absolutely.
So I understand. But given that being said, we've got a lot of people that are still presenting this information. Because like you said, you can look up all these websites and there it lists his parents as Patrick McCarthy and Catherine Devine. And some of these sites have blended, the two Catherines together. So it's one gigantic name, right? It's Catherine Devine McCarty Antrim, right? And it's like they're two separate people, obviously. But there's not a way to really fix that. It's just everywhere you turn, that's where people, if I just were to ask a random person on Facebook or in a comment or whatever, you could see it pretty often that the ones that are unsure or just Googled it, that's that's what they're aware of, and that's what they may think. You know.
Right.
Um, with that being said, we do remember one of the biggest things that we have that would, to me, definitely place the kid as being born in New York, or at least having a better chance of him.
Yeah.
Is that always remember that brother Joseph, our Joseph McCarthy, he did list his birthplace as New York for the U.S. federal census, Silverton, San Juan County, Colorado, June 1st, 1880. To me, that's one of the biggest ones that we could, hey, he's there. The chances that Billy was or Henry was born in Indianapolis, I don't believe that one quite.
Right.
I know that it looks good. It looks good on paper, but
Yeah.
I don't think that there's not a full definitive link like we have after after she marries Antrim, and we have their names as the witnesses, and then things become a little bit more clear. We have all the Wichita information, so obviously we know that these two women are not the same. But we also have what you and I have discovered in groups, comments, people that come along and say, I've done my genealogy research based on this,
Yeah.
right? And maybe they are related to those McCarthys. Maybe they definitely are. I don't know. That's not my place to say. But they're also now under the impression they are related to the most notorious outlaw in history.
Yeah.
And it develops I don't know, kind of like a personality conflict about, well, now I'm related to Kid, right? Now they're an expert on Billy the Kid. We've seen it a lot.
Yeah.
And I think that this episode was important because, like you said, you can go look at those things right now and you'll find it listed as his parents. And, it's kind of disappointing. And I understand because a lot of people thought, well, why is everyone always going on podcasts and writing articles saying we don't have definitive information on his parents? What about all that Catherine Devine? Like, they found all that information. We know, and I think it's just, it's what they see on the surface without really looking into it and clicking. I think another great example is the so-called affidavits for Brushy Bill, and his friends.
Sure.
Right on the surface, you're like, "Wow, man, that's great. He's Billy. Look at this." Then when you dive into it, how long does it take? Probably less than an hour. Less than an hour, probably. If you know what you're doing, I would say less than an hour to find, like Severos Gallegos, he's one of those guys on the list. Everyone else, you dig, you go in, but you find them.
Yeah.
And then you find out that their birthplaces, their ages, you know, just nothing is right because technically they're all people who knew Brushy. They didn't know Billy the Kid. So they were just confirming that they knew him,
Right.
and then he told stories that he was the kid and that they believed him. I mean, that's it. But, those kind of discrepancies and no one wants to really research. But when you dig into it, there's always usually something, that can kind of point us in direction. And I think what shows that another reason why this wasn't the case for this McCarthy family was it was too perfect, right? Nothing about kid history is perfect. We know that. It's conflicted all the way throughout. We can definitely say we know where he was, certain events, because it's highly publicized events, the shooting of Brady, all these things. So we know those things, sure. But I would say that the quest for the origins of Billy the Kid continue.
Yes. Absolutely. And one thing that really intrigues me about Damatus's hypothesis and his findings is when he talks about Joseph, the brother, because that's when I heard that, I was like, this could be a big deal, this divine theory here. But I've never found
Correct.
any documentation, any primary source material about this Joseph outside of Damatus's theory. And so when Damatus comes at us with a very specific birth date, all this information, I would like to see the original source. I'm not saying it was fabricated. I'm just saying you have to vet it. And I've never seen
Yes.
anything about this Joseph outside of Damatos himself. And again, I want to be very clear. I'm not saying he fabricated it, because there's a lot of source documents that are not available online, and that folks like us in states away,
Right.
can't reach without some good old snail mail and reaching out to people by phone. And maybe we just need to call those people to get it. But it would be cool if, and again, I don't have these articles in front of me, but it would be cool if Damatis provided that source material for us to check it, and I hope he does. But I've never
Yeah.
seen any other evidence about this Joseph. So, like, if you get this really specific birth date, um,
Hmm.
and can definitely tie it to the parents, Patrick and Catherine Devine, then that's another
Hmm.
thing entirely. But that's the part of this theory that I'm most curious about. And I'll give you an
Right.
example of why you don't want to just believe a source, even if it's specifically stated in a book. You always want to be able to go check it out if you can, because there was this book that came out. Gosh, let me see. I've got it here in front of me. It's called Billy the Kid: A Date with Destiny by Carl
Okay.
Brahan, and a bigger name in the field of the Western history. It's got an introduction by Robert Mullen. And Mullen's a big name
Wow. Okay.
in the industry.
Yeah.
And
I've
I'm
never
looking
I've never heard of the book.
right. Well, I'm looking for a date on it, but it was probably like the late '70s, maybe.
Hmm.
But it's by Carl Brahan with Marion Ballard. 1970 by Superior Publishing Company. And anyway, chapter 1 talks about the origins of Billy the Kid. And listen to this. If you've never heard this, Doss, it's quite the tale. His parents were William H. and Catherine Bonney, who came from New Orleans to New York about 6 months prior to the kid's birth. Uh, how Mrs. Bonney acquired the name of McCarthy has always been a mystery, but in a recent conversation with a man who had known an uncle of Billy the Kid, he stated that she assumed that name after William H. Bonney Sr. had been killed in New York City in 1862. Here's a specific source. The July 19th, 1862 issue of the New York Sun supposedly carried an account of Bonney's murder by one Harley Henderson, a man who was in love with Mrs. Bonney. The records of the Municipal Archives Center of New York City indicate William Bonney, a carman residing at 386 10th Street from 1860 to 61, and the same Bonney living at 271 East 12th Street, 1861 to 62. The kid's father was buried in a cemetery on the old circular road on the outskirts of Brooklyn. Um, and I mean, it goes
Hmm.
on. There's a record of the name Bonnie in New York City in the archives of St. Augustine's Church. The burial of Mrs. Bonnie, a relative of the kid's father. I mean, all these sources, and I've not been able to vet a single one. And so, did they make them up? Were they acting on in good faith with bad
Right.
sources from other people? I don't know, but this is how stuff gets confused, and how you know a wrong information or fabricated information can be just duplicated over and over, so that
Yeah.
you know two generations down the line, somebody's quoting, saying Billy was born in New Orleans, and quoting Brahan, as the expert. And
Yeah.
Robert Mullen did the intro on this, so like, it's dangerous stuff, and you got
Hmm.
to vet your sources.
Yeah. I've heard the New Orleans theory before, but I didn't know that's where it came from.
Well,
That's interesting.
yeah, I think another New Orleans connection comes from the fact that one of the guys who was trying to prove up a claim in Wichita on land that Catherine McCarty owned said that she moved
Hmm.
away like 6 months or a year ago, that they moved to New Orleans. And he probably just mixed up New Orleans with New Mexico. Um, but
Yeah.
that's another place that the New Orleans thing pops in.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. And it's unfortunately, we're dealing with, different names at different timelines. And I think at this point, I don't want to say that, but I do think at this point, what we know about him as far as childhood stuff, um, the information that came from like Chauncey Truesdale and the other Silver City kids,
Yeah.
I think that might be, yeah, I think that might be some of our best stuff as far as what we got for him. And then, of course, all the Wichita stuff as far as Catherine, we can follow that trail. Anything prior, man, it is such a bumpy road with so many interesting things. And I know you'll remind me of his name because I can't think of it off the top of my head. But the gentleman from Terre Haute, Indiana, who knew who Billy was in that article after he was killed, right?
Right.
And knew
Yeah.
his name and said that he was from here, right? And
Not.
there's
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
right? But again, has that ever led anywhere?
Well, what's crazy is he didn't say he was born there. It was Sheriff Vandiver, and
Okay,
he
all right,
just said
right.
that he was in Terre Haute while Catherine worked in Indianapolis, which is, I mean, that's an interesting detail. But he could have still been from New York, but he just remembered the kid, causing trouble in Terre Haute.
Yeah. Well, and of course, we still have the old famous 1880 Lorenzo Labadie, census. The kid's 25 years old and from Missouri,
Yeah.
correct?
Yep.
Yeah, that one's always been a kicker to me. I've got my own little personal theory on that. You and I have talked about this. I haven't done any kind of like straight up documentation. I started putting it together a timeline, but it is very specific and it's hard because so much of kid lore is so much of kid lore and it blends too much and you have to divide it. But
Yeah.
I am under the impression one of the reasons why many historians before us, the old guard, the new kings, everyone out there busting their butt and putting themselves out there, they can't uncover certain things. And we're all blending our own research. We're all willing to look, try where others haven't, and there's been numerous. Why can't we knock down and hold these documentation down about him? Why can't we completely specify certain things between him and Joseph? And why did Joseph say born in New York in 1880? Why did he say different things later on?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, right. Why is Billy 25 years old and from Missouri in the 1880 census that has thrown off everyone for years? I personally believe, here's my theory. It's like this for us because of Billy himself.
Yeah.
That is my opinion. From a very young age, he is doing a lot of small juvenile things and petty things, right? But from a very young age, it seems like the trail of misinformation is just dribbled out little bits at a time. And by the time he gets to New Mexico and he's with Frank and George, he's with Middleton, he's with Charlie, we still have some New Yorks, floating around in there. But then you have, different things that come out. So I don't know, but I also just remembered another big piece of information is William Antrim's Civil War pension application.
Yeah.
I just remembered that. And, there's a question. Did your wife, was your wife previously married? And did you two have children? And he says, wife's first husband died in New York City. Okay. Now, of course, Antrim doesn't give us anything more than that. But I'm going to assume if anyone knew, it was her second husband.
I agree.
That would be my assumption that he's there. He knows. The rest of that question, did you two have any children? And I have a copy. A lot of people have a copy of that Civil War pension application. It's a
Yeah.
little hard to make out. It's hard to make out in some spots, but you transcribed it for me a couple years back, and I saved it. And you look closely, and now I can see it after you transcribed it. And it says he responded, my wife had two boys, one who died in the 80s,
Yep.
meaning 1880s, and the other one, I think he said the other one
I
I
haven't
either
seen for
lost
14
track
years.
of or, yeah, yes, haven't seen the other one in so many years, right. And his pension application, I believe, was like 1910 or something like that. I can't
Yeah.
remember. I'd have to look at it.
He
But
said
yeah,
I haven't
so
seen him in 14 years, which would have been about 1901 because the pension app was in 1915.
okay, there we go.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Again, but then what have we encountered down the line of our own research paths? I've encountered people that go, yeah, but can't trust this.
Right.
Well, this guy may not have done that right. Here's what I found. You know, I don't know. Like, I mean, I've read that Nolan himself, which he did a little too much. The more I go back and review, especially West of Lee the Kid and his Lincoln County War, a documentary history book.
Yeah.
He offers way too much of his own opinion in West of Billy the Kid. The more you go back and you look at pinpointed events, especially the kid's death, holy cow, man. I've gone back and really read he lends way too much of his own opinion. Way too much. And he also, and we know this, and Mills has reminded me a few times that you're going to find that more and more. There's a lot of things that Nolan included without any kind of footnotes whatsoever.
Yeah.
And I have fallen victim to, using him as a specific source of something and then going back and checking and going, wait a minute, where's your footnote for this? Where did you make this up? Is this you just thinking this is what they said? Because he does it a lot. And so there are certain speculations that we kind of have to stay away from. But what I was saying was Nolan in West of Billy Kid, he lends his opinion that Antrim was just like this real shitty stepdad,
Yeah.
right? Like you're looking at it, you're reading it going, gee, you'd make it seem like he was taking Henry and Josie by their necks and and yanking them around or something. I've
Yeah,
never
man.
understood where that came from. Oh, he's just crappy stepdad.
Me either.
Well, when you look at all the things that William Antrim did for Catherine McCarty, sorry, now I'm getting confused. Catherine McCarty, when they were in Wichita, all the stuff he did for her property, all of that stuff, that to me really seemed like on paper, everything he did, especially when they filed her landmark claim, right? He had to, everything that they added, everything that they, bought, everything. And you see all the hard labor that he attributed to that property. That tells me he probably was putting his boots in the ground and thinking they were going to be there for a while.
Yes.
You know what I mean? You don't go do all that at their age. But then what
No.
happens? She gets tuberculosis, or she already had it, and things change. And within a couple of years of after all that property attributes that he let, they were gone. They had to pack up and leave. So I've always been really confused why or what people would have expected of him after Catherine died. I'm not sure, but
Right.
either way, it's just people's opinions, that don't have much to do with the record. I would go by saying that he cared at least a little bit. You know, you
Yeah.
don't you don't go do all that work if you don't care. To put
Well,
in that kind of effort.
here's the thing, man. I mean, it does. It's not so much important to me to what other people's perceptions of Antrim's behavior was. It's how Joseph and Henry and Catherine would have interpreted this situation. And when you read his pension app from 1915, and he says, I last saw the surviving son 14 years ago. 14 years is a long
Yeah.
time, but that's still so however many years, over 20 after the death of Catherine. So he's keeping in touch.
Right.
And Joseph is finding a reason to still communicate with William Antrim in 1901 or so.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
Yeah.
significant to me. And, they always say, well,
Yeah.
he wasn't at the funeral. Well, maybe, probably. It seems to be based on eyewitness accounts from maybe Louis Abraham or somebody. But we
Right.
just don't know. We don't know what the what's the word I'm looking for? The chemistry or the arrangement was in the family. And to go off just into complete speculation, for whatever reason, maybe William Antrim wasn't a romantic man, but the relationship was more of a business-like setup. Maybe they really liked each other and got along well and did business well together. And he's just like, I'll look after your kids as best I can. But they didn't expect a father figure, a complete doting father figure. But he was a member of the family and helped him out when he could. There's just things we can't know from census records and once a decade and from documents.
Yeah.
We miss so much, and I've always really been bothered by people just blanketing William Antrim with the crappy stepfather routine because there's no way to know, and it doesn't seem like Joe ever felt that way, and probably Henry. I mean,
Yeah.
even when he said, he told Governor Wallace, Antrim's my stepfather's name. Like, I'm still using my stepfather's name. Like, why would he do that? Um,
Right. Yeah,
just
exactly.
stuff like that. It's just, but you were saying about his about the false information trails and everything like that. Were you saying that you think it came from Billy, that he was intentionally dropping little misinfo trails?
I think yes, here and there,
Yeah,
but I have this image in my head of how it might have gone down, and I don't necessarily think there was a maybe like mysterious deliberation to it. Like I
yeah,
want these people to be confused about who I am. I picture him with a big, shit eating grin on his face on a horse with his buck teeth showing and be like, oh, pal, I'm from New York City,
yeah,
and then he's a storyteller.
yeah,
Billy's a storyteller, which is one of his most enduring, legacies, I think, that he just had this quick wit. And there's a lot of things that I love about certain documentation that comes from like Frank and George, and things about his personality that I always appreciate. And then when you see little things that come out about his humor, and there's
yeah,
actually documentation about, a funny moment that he might have, entertained some people. I like that kind of stuff, but as always, I would say, well, I don't know, man, 80% of what you find out when you start internet searching certain things,
yeah,
80% of it is all misinformation.
yeah,
It's crazy for me to say the number's that high, but it's that high, And the thing that you're just talking about, like people like us, either just historians or humble Billy enthusiasts who just love it and want to be a part of it. That's the path that I wish a lot didn't take. This, like you said, blanketing William Antrim as you're the biggest, crappiest stepfather ever.
right,
And because you did not reach out to Henry, you were not there for him. He became a thieving little bastard named Kid Antrim, and look at his life.
yeah,
Anybody and everybody will make up every excuse they can for Billy, except just going ahead and realizing that at a certain age it makes sense. After a certain age, especially after he's in Lincoln and gets himself involved in what he gets himself involved in, the people that will no, 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 no. These are the bad guys. It's so black and white. They're bad. He's a freedom fighter. He's trying to do it to help his Englishman friend who was killed. All this stuff, the revenge plot. It's just all so they can make excuses to put him on that anti-hero pedestal.
yeah,
And then sometimes it's not, I think he's an anti-hero. That's what I call him. But in most eyes, no, he's a hero. He was fighting for what he, believed in and help his friends. And then, of course, that will carry on as far as, well, he killed Bob Unger and J.W. Bell, and it was what he had to do. And can you blame him? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that same camp, that same crowd, which this is a huge percentage. We were just getting into this with other people in comment section in the group the other week about why did Garrett do what he did? Well,
Right.
gee, I don't know. Because Billy was sentenced to death. Whether you agree with it or not about the whole Brady, conviction, it's irrelevant. He was sentenced to death, to hang. Okay? He murders two guards, both are U.S. or deputy U.S. marshals. Okay? So there's that. Not only are they deputies there and, sheriffs, but they're deputy U.S. marshals. He's already sentenced to death. So there's that crowd of people that believe that he should have been recaptured, everything fair right down the line, get another trial, and do
Right.
all this other stuff. Right? There's that camp. And when you start developing that belief and that system of injustice for Billy, injustice for Billy, that's where you end up. And that's why we have, I believe, so much misinformation. It's not just like the historians or whatever that have written the books about Brushy. It's not just that. It's the power of our internet and how it reaches so many paths of research of people out there who are into Jesse James, or now they're into Wild Bill, and now they're into Wyatt Earp, and now they're into Billy. And then there's guys like me that just stay focused and just stay with the Billy Pat Garrett history because, man, you could probably do it forever and still learn new stuff, debunk old stuff that we've always believed, like we just did here. It's great work. It's factual. It's like, here's what we know. We definitely know he wasn't Billy the Kid. But
Yeah.
this guy right here, I feel like this Patrick Henry McCarthy, he's kind of got his own story. It's kind of interesting. Why
Yeah.
the discrepancies on the birth date? You know what I mean? Why all of a sudden does he have a consistency of about 1859, and then all of a sudden it says in 1900, no, he's born October 1862, and that's what shows up on his death certificate as well.
Right.
So again, it's that era of history that we have to deal with this constant misinformation, discrepancies in paperwork, discrepancies in governmental documentation, and we have to wade through all the crap and do the best we can. But again, from the get go, I've always there are certain things that are just too good to be true. And I think with kid history, we've realized that it's just not possible. Everything just does not line up all the time. You know what I mean? It almost never
Doesn't.
does with him. No, you,
Yeah.
you find, yeah, and you know better than anyone. You get on a path and you're like, this looks good. This looks good.
Yeah.
This source backs, yeah, this account backs this up. But then there's always something from someone that even if in your mind go, as a historian, I should know that this account came 60 years after the event from someone who probably wasn't there at all. However, what they're saying kind of sounds true. So then what are you stuck doing? Now you got to go research that guy's story, you know?
Yep.
But
And
that's how we get to the bottom of it.
it is. It's meticulous and never ending, but gosh, an addiction all the same. But I mean,
Oh, I love it. I love it so much. I love it so much.
it is. I mean, it really is addictive. The rush. I mean, I can't tell you how many nights I've thought I've had the puzzle pieced together and been like, "Oh my goodness, it all makes sense." And then after 8 hours of everything falling right into place, boom, you find that one piece of evidence that just negates the whole thing and you're back to square one.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I feel like this is kind of one of those things with this McCarthy family. Like I was previously saying. Now I'm not mentioning anybody's names. I wouldn't do that. But over the course of the last, 3, 4 years that we've been involved in this, and you have Facebook groups and Chasing Billy, the YouTube comments, multiple Facebook groups, whatever. You're gonna meet and greet a lot of people that are coming in there saying, "I am related to Billy the Kid,"
Right.
and we have seen these people be bombarded within seconds, and we understand why, because of the hardcore researchers that know that's not possible because we still are lacking any records to prove anything.
Yeah, we don't know who he
You
was.
know what I mean? As far as right. We don't even have the father. You got to have the father. We have to have more origin information about Catherine,
Yeah.
and which, of course, we go down to like George's new book. Same thing. You pick well. It's about the right date, so it must be her.
It's not good enough.
That's no, it's not. It's not. And so again, I've seen this frequently. People that are leaving reviews about that book and are specifically talking about the Catherine McCarthy immigration ship, and I'm like, dude. But if you're really paying attention, like you said, and I have looked into it in the Kindle version. I didn't want to, but I did.
Not-
And yeah, where's the rest of it?
right.
Where's the rest of it? He just wants you to think, here, I have uncovered this. Now I'm going to leave a massive gap in the timeline. But suddenly she is Catherine Antrim who marries Willie. You know what I mean? And there's no link. There's nothing that he does. They did a great job of just pointing that out from a historical standpoint. Here's what you're saying, and here's what we know, and here's what you failed to do from historic standpoint. And it
Yeah.
was very well done and it was professional. But again, even people who saw that, probably within a few weeks after, I was still seeing people talk about his Catherine Antrim immigration thing,
Yeah.
or I still see someone coming in there saying, I don't understand why everyone says we don't know his parents. Yes, we do. All you have to go is go look here, and it says Patrick McCarty and Catherine Devine, Antrim McCarty. You know what I mean? And I'm like, dude. So no matter how hard we might work, or Josh might work, or Jeremiah might work,
Right.
anyone, you're still going to have to, headbutt this kind of verbal traffic head on. there's no
Yeah.
way to avoid it. I've noticed. You'll put out a great piece. Josh will, Massimo will, I will. Lots of people. Now that's real good. That's strong research. That good. You supported everything you need to support, and people will like it and they'll comment on it. And within 3 days, if someone decides to propose a question just as a speculative proposal, well, suddenly all the factual information 3 days in the exact same topic is now null and void, and everyone forgot it. And now they're on a new path of speculative theory that makes no sense.
Yeah. And man, it's overwhelming. I mean, no matter how
It
I
is.
try to be as clear as possible in the case of Matthew's book that I regretfully offer this critique. I'm not trying to set out to tear anyone down or to not recommend a book. But here it is. Here's what it says, and here's why I disagree. But it is just drowned out by the countless praising reviews, not even good reviews, like laudable, like overwhelmingly positive reviews about how amazing it is. And even the people that know better, because there's this atmosphere that permeates in today's culture and in this field that you can't be critical. If you don't have anything nice to say, don't say it at all. And so you get these great
Mm-hmm.
reviews by people who know better. They say, well, is he right in his assumptions? Maybe not, but it's a well-meaning new addition to the library and things like that. But there's seriously bad info in there, and there are conclusions
Mm-hmm.
that aren't justified that people will think is gospel, and it's not right, man. And it's unfortunate that any critique, any uh, any kind of constructive criticism is just overwhelmed by people trying to be positive and put on a good face and be nice, and that's just unfortunate.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I understand. When you said overwhelming, it's such a great word to describe it because when I got involved in this, I don't know about you, but I was always the assumption there's two camps. There's two camps. Those who believe that Garrett killed the kid and that he died that night. And of course, the camp that believe either A, that he was brushy, he became brushy, or
Right.
that Garrett just didn't kill him. But
Right.
then when you get involved and you really learn, and we're not talking just about Facebook, you know what I mean? You have literally interviewed Bob Bose Bell. You've interviewed actors from the MGM series, Billy the Kid. So you've encountered this as much as, anybody else. And there's so much information out there. And I mean, again, I'm not trying to talk badly about anything, but I remembered in one of those interviews from one of the actors from the show and was, giving their own history lesson that was clearly very incorrect. And I remember listening and just going, well, you just kind of have to bite through it and it is what it is. But
Yeah.
that's the problem.
Yeah.
That's the problem. People that are part of the camps where I'm not really into books. I just want to listen to podcasts. I just go to YouTube. Well, they watch that. They see that episode. And for some reason, there are those that would believe that an actor portraying someone from this amazing piece of history is going to be the top notch, historian on the matter. And it's just not true. It's the same thing with descendants that, I'm the
Right.
great great granddaughter of this person. So everyone goes, oh, well, tell us all the stories. That doesn't mean that they know any stories. It doesn't
Right.
mean they know anything at all,
It's like a royal
you know?
bloodline.
Yeah. And we were talking, Josh and I were talking recently just about how those internal, kind of old timer on the porch drinking beer stories, just how devastating they can be to history,
Yeah.
especially when people would rather think that that is the type of history, quote unquote, that we should be listening to, and we know which one of our favorite cowboy detectives likes to follow this same theory,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Whatever you historians have put out there, it's all BS. You're the liars. You're the manipulators. It's these old guys telling stories on the porch. And, well, I knew a guy back in 82 that told me this and that. That's the legitimacy that they're going for.
Right.
And they base their research off of it. And look what that's presented. It's presented two books that a lot of people bought and read and are now under the belief that the information in those books are true. You know what I mean? And I
Yeah.
won't say those two books. I could. I think you know which books I mean. But
Yeah.
the point is that now we have to deal with that. There isn't a day that goes by, a week that goes by that someone won't throw out something from one of those two books that I'm talking about. Well, what about this? What about what he said? What about it? What about it? But that's what I'm saying. You realize the camps, the different camps. There's the brushy camp. There's the purist, like us. We know the kid was killed. We know Garrett killed him. Is there possibly some discrepancy and some shadiness? For sure. It doesn't seem, there's that little bit of the timing just seems off, and I get it. I understand. Either way, we do know that he was killed. We don't believe in the fairy tale nonsense because that's not how it works, man. It's just not how it works,
Yeah.
you know. But all these camps of people, then there's the camp that I never thought I would encounter. The ones that, again, that tell us that our research is our opinion, which is really just really difficult to bite down on, man. I'm like, I didn't give my opinion in there at all. Like, I didn't say anything at all that would, those are all dates. Here's the sources. And then if it's in parentheses, that person actually said it. I didn't say that. But I understand that's the risk we take for putting ourselves out there. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I understand, but I never expected to encounter that. The camp of people that are like so anti-history that anything that we might present about specifically the night that the kid died and all the documentation that followed, Well, then there's those camp of people, like I was just saying, that's the negative information. That's just what they want you, you know. So we realize that there's all these camps, and with all these camps come avenues and avenues of misinformation, and somewhere in the middle of there, a non-forked road, just lies, and you have to do the best you can. But we know that it's very difficult. You start seeing these side roads. Side roads have very interesting thoughts, and
Yeah.
it's very fun, and it's very I like the journey of you know excuse me, going down those roads. But like you said, a lot of times you can put these pieces together and you really think you have something, and then there's that one nail in the coffin piece of documentation that you cannot get around.
Right.
And I think to close it all out, I think that's perfect to reroute back to what we did here with the McCarthy family, that the supposed Henry McCarthy is actually Patrick Henry McCarthy, and he's got a documented life that completely separates him from our Billy the Kid, especially considering that one of them is driving a cab in Manhattan at the age of 21 in 1880, married to a woman named Mary, while our Billy the Kid is in New Mexico in 1880, slowly but surely becoming the most notorious outlaw in history.
Well, I was going to say to kind of riff off of your what you said about the side paths and how interesting they are to go down. One of the lesser joys of research and going into this field, next to finding the big things out, one of the lesser joys is being able to close off a side road. And I feel like we can definitively close off the side road of the Catherine Devine theory because we've got this Henry McCarthy, son of Patrick McCarthy and Catherine Devine. We've got his life nicely bookended. We've got a birth
Yeah,
certificate with both parents' names, and we've got a death certificate with both parents' names, and open and shut case. We've got it.
yeah,
We can close this road off.
absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
yeah, and I think that's a good place to end it, and uh, start planning on what we're going to do the next time we get together. Because this was fun, man. I love this. I love the audio only
Yes,
conversation.
yes,
That's
I
like,
agree. It allows me to kind of move around if I need to.
but I do like it. It feels like a radio show, uh,
Yeah,
and I really enjoy this format. So we'll do this anytime you want. If you find another subject you want to spin a yarn about, and we'll get back on ASAP.
absolutely. Sounds good to me, man. I've got all kinds of things we can talk about.
Absolutely, and we'll do it. Well, I'll go ahead and close this out and get to work editing, and we'll get it up soon.
All right. Have a good one, brother. Good to
All
talk to
right,
you.
dude. Good talking to you. See ya.
Bye bye.